Hello, good evening. My name is Evangeline, and it has been my pleasure to direct this production of Marc Antonio e Cleopatra.
Hi, I'm Grace, and I'm the set and costume designer.
Hello, I'm Satoko Doi-Luck. I'm music director and playing Hasse tonight. So thank you very much for coming to this pre-opera talk. We want to talk about this opera by Hasse, Antonio and Cleopatra, and also about the production at this festival. So I'm sure you all know who's Johann Adolph Hasse, but just to explain a little bit about him. He was a German composer, and he was, at his time, he was really popular and internationally renowned composers. He, one of the internationally renowned composers like Handel. And he was born in 1699, so it's just about sort of between J.S. Bach and C.P. Bach, if you sort of put in a context. So it's kind of late in Baroque, but then he has a one foot into the classical. So really he lived in a transition period of Baroque to the classical. And listening his music, you can really sense that, the sort of transition of style, and he has sort of both essence in from the Baroque and classical, which is great things. But maybe, possibly one of the reasons that rarely performed these days, because he was kind of sort of forgotten for the transition time, and then really didn't make sort of continuing to be played. So that might be one of the reasons. And tonight's opera, Antonio and Cleopatra, was premiered in 1725 in Naples, and you might have been to the other opera production at this festival. You might have noticed, but other operas, La Viva la Diva and La Donna del Lago, they're both premiered in Naples, so you might have noticed that the premiere was in Naples. That was a kind of a background theme of 3 operas that Adrian, the artist director, has chosen for this year's festival. And I'm so grateful for him to choose me as a director for this Hasse opera. I knew 1 or 2 arias from this serenata, or short opera, whatever you call it, but I didn't sort of know of the whole piece, so it was really a great opportunity for me to learn this piece and sort of work on and sort of discovering all the little corners of Hasse's music, which is a great discovery for me. And in the premiere in 1725, Cleopatra, role of Cleopatra was sung by Farinelli, the castrato, and he was only 20 years old at that time, so he was really young, but he was already sort of significantly sort of making to the sort of stardom, making his career as a castrato and opera singer. And the Antonio's role was sung by Vittoria Tesi, the lady called Vittoria Tesi, and she was quite rare in that time to be an opera singer of African descent. So her father was an African sort of origin, and her mum was the lady from Firenze. So she was sort of mixed-race singer on the stage, which was, I think, rare in the time. And so she was contralto, and then he was castrato. So kind of, as a role, it's a sort of genders are sort of other way around, but back then it wasn't really matter. Also, it was really common to be composed for the close sort of range, vocal range, to be a sort of lovers, so that all the duets could be really close harmony and sort of sing together like a third or sixth, and sort of nice harmony and sing along. So you will hear tonight there are 2 duets in this opera, and they're sort of conversationally sort of following each other in 6, and then they sing together in thirds, if I'm talking about the interval of the notes. So that sort of creates the nice intimate sort of duet moments, so you hope you will enjoy that moment. And then there may be a story about this opera you can sort of tell, Evangeline, about it.
Yes, yeah. It's been a fascinating piece to get to know. I think definitely a challenge at the beginning. Satoko mentioned it's a serenata, so not intended to be staged in the way that something like Donna del Lago was written to be. And that was a challenge at first. But really our way in was through these characters of Antony and Cleopatra. And particularly at the beginning, I knew that we'd all be coming in with a sense of who Antony and Cleopatra are. And I wanted to draw on that instead of hiding from it. And particularly the Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra has been present with us throughout as a big inspiration, and also, I suppose, the elephant in the room that we wanted to acknowledge. It's a very intimate piece. It really is just a conversation in many ways. It follows quite a soothing pattern of recit, aria, but it is not quite a naturalistic psychology in that sense. But we found a way in through the characters themselves being such incredibly dramatic, rich people, and I think the challenge was then finding who they are to us today. If Grace, you want to talk a little bit about the references that we included?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, as Evangeline said, we wanted to make it relevant and set it in the modern day, not that obviously modern day settings are the only relevant settings, but to sort of find our way through the pomp and the grandeur and sort of very 18th century idea of these ancient figures about which we know so much and yet somehow so little, and sort of get to the humanity of them, whilst also very much being aware of, as you say, these elephants in the room, whether it's the real figures themselves or other adaptations, such as the 1963 film, which is a big influence. So our idea is that they are contemporary celebrities, and in a way, in modern day, this is sort of the closest we get to godlike figures or huge rulers. If you're not going down the literal politics route, that they were, President Trump or whatever, we decided to not go down that route and instead to sort of see them as modern day celebrities. And as with ancient rulers, celebrities, they go up and they go down. Their star rises and their star falls. So I think that was a really interesting thing to explore, but also we wanted to think about ideas of doomed lovers throughout movie history, and also ideas of characters on the run. So that was a big part of deciding to set it in this hotel room, which you see behind us, is that they're on the run and they're hiding and they're deciding what they need to do because they're on the losing side of history. So some of the film references we have are, as we said, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor in the Cleopatra film, but also Thelma and Louise is a big influence, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, Bonnie and Clyde as well, and then other films sort of coming in like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Badlands, that sort of Hollywood era of romantic runaways, whether that's a friendship or in this case, two lovers hiding, escaping, and something about the sort of the glamour of the costume combined with the squalor of this hotel room where they're stuck was a really fun design challenge to unlock.
Yeah, in my research I was really excited by the reports of how extravagant this relationship was and how they really created their own alternate reality. It was always exciting to me to find a couple who came from two very different backgrounds and couldn't find anywhere to be together. And so in looking for somewhere to set it, I always knew it had to be somewhere non-permanent and somewhere that was going to force them in one way and out the other. And yeah, it is a very intimate piece in that sense, and so we see these characters really explain who they are and what they're standing for, what they want to live for. And for Cleopatra, she speaks a lot about dignity, and that felt like a very exciting thing to think about contemporary celebrity and the idea of being publicly shamed, what that does to a person's sense of self, and how that gets put at risk.
Questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah.
Can I offer a comment on the question in support of Satoko's observation of Hasse's significance, but also perhaps drawback from his point of view now, is that he is so transitional. His first huge success when he was engaged with his wife for Dresden was an opera called Cleopatra. And we don't know for certain, but it's quite likely that the premiere of that was attended by J.S. Bach, because we know he was in Dresden on that very day with his son Wilhelm Friedmann. 40 years later, Hasse was commissioned to write another piece for a ducal wedding in Milan in 1770. And we know for a fact that Mozart and his father were there, Mozart then 14 years old, because Mozart, writing back to his family in Salzburg, comments on the opera as being nice but rather old-fashioned. So you've got a composer who grew up just a little bit after Bach and Handel, went through the absolute forcing house of the Neapolitan world in the 1720s, but survived into the world of Mozart and Haydn. And by then it's a bit outdated. But what we've got now is something from his very earliest career, so great to hear it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for adding the information. And I was rehearsing this piece for a month now, and it's really great music you were here this evening. And I was wondering why his operas, like over 60 of them, I guess, wasn't performed as much as Handel's, because they're both, Handel's opera series are much performed and sometimes difficult, stuffy topic, but like it's really like major festival grind on or any major festivals in Europe and America, in Asia, we all perform, and didn't really sort of revived enough, even in apparently in his sort of anniversary years. I've read somewhere. And yeah, I was wondering why, because looking at those composers like Bach, as you mentioned, I guess after J.S. Bach died, his music wasn't, again, like not outdated, but like the fashion goes sort of a different style. And but then sort of Mendelssohn picked up to perform like his St. Matthew Passion in his time. So it's a kind of the Romantic composers discover again and kind of try to perform, or even like a Jean-Frédéric Rameau, the French Baroque composer's piece was sort of edited and published by Sanson in the Romantic era, and those was sort of lucky discovery and revived. And also looking at Handel, I guess, I'm not sure about the other pieces, but Messiah was certainly sort of kept played. Even it became sort of arranged in clarinets and horns in a different shape as that maybe Handel didn't even imagine. But it just kept performed, and then sort of coming back to this Baroque setting of kind of original, historically informed sort of setting with period and instruments. Now we play Messiahs. But then I guess that Hasse's music not sort of discovered by either those Romantic era composers or didn't sort of continue performed. So now we can rediscover. I was looking the other day his harpsichord music available online, and I was looking at maybe I can do my solo recital of Hasse's 6 harpsichord sonatas or something he wrote. So I think I found another sort of not calling duty, but like I thought like I should sort of spread more love of Hasse's music. I thought so. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's performance and sort of and the good thing about the audience reaction these days is that sort of I believe it moves the opera houses and festivals. So if you say, Hasse's music was great, then they will program again Hasse's different operas. So if you enjoyed tonight, just please do say out loud, like, Hasse's music was great. Because I feel so. I really enjoy, and all the bands are really enjoying. I don't know if you're really, I know you're very familiar with the Baroque instruments, but I just wanted to explain a little bit about it. So I'm playing harpsichord and waving hands occasionally to put things together. But we are 5 strings, so 1 per part, 2 violins, 1 viola and cello and double bass, all playing sort of either original or historically informed sort of a copy of the replica of the sort of instruments from that time of Hasse. And so, for example, cello doesn't have an end pin, so he's holding between, the cellist is holding between 2 legs, and the violinist doesn't have a chin rest and sort of shoulder rest, so that he's holding with the left hand. But because the music of the time doesn't really go to the up or like down so quickly, he can just hold with his shoulder and the shoulders and hands. And we all, the strings are all like a gut strings, and sometimes we struggle with the weather of England, because when it's humid or hot and humid, the gut string is sort of getting loose and going back to the life. I know what to say. But then my harpsichord, the wood sort of absorb the humidity and sort of expand. Then the strings are tighter, so my pitch goes up and the strings go down. So we are like, oh, bye. And so hopefully today it's not too bad weather, great weather actually today. So hopefully our pitches hold for the short opera lengths. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed the sound of it. And then we are not in the pit, but on the stage, which is great. So you can actually, I want you to be focused on Cleopatra and Antonio on the stage, but also we sort of, our sound is not so sort of hidden underground. We are on the stage, so you can hear the sort of fresh and, you know, sort of, I don't know how to explain the sort of, for me, the comparison to modern orchestra, it's more meaty sound. It's blood in it. So I hope you can hear. And then also when they sing, it's really nice sort of singing tone of those gut string instruments. So I really hope you enjoy those timbre as well. Yes.
I don't know the composer at all, so thank you so much for all that information.
Okay.
2 questions. Did he write his own librettos?
No.
And 2, themes. Did he tend to delve back into antiquity for ancient themes to illustrate so many operas?
So first answer is no, he didn't write it. So it was by Francesco Ricciardi, and who was kind of a poet, but also some kind, not politician, but like he was good at sort of collecting money. So he found this patron to host the opera performance for this occasion. So he was kind of good sort of entrepreneur and write libretto, and Hasse composed it. And Hasse did work with a famous librettist later on, but most of the time the composer just find the libretto or work with the writer to write. And maybe second answer.
I can't think too much to whether he went back to antiquity a lot, but speaking about knowing that this piece was sponsored, I think if you'll forgive the spoiler, where we traditionally expect a kind of deus ex machina, towards the end of the piece we have a big devotion to the sponsors of the piece and the people that initially created it, which did present some challenge to us, I think. There's a lot of emailing about, please can we simply cut it? But we've decided to embrace it, and I think it's definitely been a lesson in, I will always find the answers in the music, in the libretto, in the intention of the people that created it. And it really has, I think, unlocked a side to these characters as well, that they, what they do instead of a deus ex machina is this sort of look forward to the future. It's a very fascinating libretto in that sense.
It's very surreal, going from ancient Egypt and ancient Rome to sort of the Danube, and there's Charles and Elizabeth, these monarchs of the future. It is quite a surreal thing when we've all been trying to get to this denouement, this sort of, and really raise the stakes. But again, I think, as you say, the answers in the music, it's good to embrace what's there. And it's obviously it's such a beautiful piece of music as well. It's probably one of my favourite bits. So I feel quite lucky that also my favourite design element is at the end as well. So it's just quite a strange, as you say, there's sort of this pattern of recit and aria, and how do you keep that action building and wait for that sort of climax, and then there's a little, it's a funny bit, yeah.
We definitely embrace the theatricality, I think, that's present in the text, and it's why we wanted to have the band so featured on stage, and to play with this idea of, you can see some of the light fixtures behind us, and clearly see as well a playing space marked out, because a piece written to be performed as a concert, but that is telling a story and has characters expressing desires and intentions, has just been such a kind of rich ground for us to play with.
The first opera I ever did at drama school was a production of Semele by Handel, and we didn't have a pit, so we had the orchestra on stage, and that forced the design to be much less naturalistic than it might have been. It kind of puts everything off centre, so as a designer, your centre lines is normally so important as a director as well, so to then have the band on stage, it shifts everything in what I think is a really great way, in a sort of asymmetric way. And it also then breaks down those ideas of fourth walls and naturalism. And also, this is a festival, so we are not here all the time. This gets put away and put it back up again and put away by our wonderful team, by Louise, our brilliant stage manager, by Jim, the brilliant venue manager, and all sorts. There's a huge team here at Buxton who make these shows happen, and then there'll be a talk, and then there'll be, all sorts going on in this venue. So another challenge, but also I think a good thing to embrace, is going, well, how can we make this light on its feet? How can this be adaptable? This is potentially going to go on tour, which is exciting. I'm not sure where. Maybe I'm not allowed to announce that. I don't know.
But if you want to take us on tour,
yeah, it's only got a van. So. Any other questions?
Great. Yeah, thank you very much for coming before the show, and I hope you all have got tickets for tonight. So we are on 7:30, so thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you very much.